Welcome to The Deep Dive, where we really kind of dive deep into some pretty interesting stuff, I guess you could say. Today, we're tackling art therapy, using the Handbook of Art Therapy as kind of our guide.
Yeah, it's more than just, art makes you feel better. We're going to be looking at how it actually works, the environment, how the artwork itself is important, and the psychological theories behind it. It's pretty fascinating.
It really is. And I think the big question for me is, how does making art actually become therapeutic? Like, what's the shift?
Right, right. And one of the first things the book talks about is the various settings art therapists work in. It's actually quite diverse.
Okay, so like environments, right. They work in hospitals, often with their own dedicated department, which is kind of cool, but also collaborating with other medical teams, even reporting to the patient's doctor and being part of rounds and meetings.
Exactly. It's often integrated into the overall treatment plan, working alongside medication and other therapies. Although, they also point out that people might continue with art therapy after being discharged from the hospital, sometimes even as their main support.
Makes sense. And it's not just hospitals, right? They also work in social services, education, day centers, places like that. Sounds like a lot of teamwork involved.
Oh, definitely. Collaboration is key, especially in those settings. But across the board, regardless of where they're working, the handbook stresses the importance of the relationship between the therapist and the client. That's at the core of it all.
And building that relationship, it seems, starts with establishing what they call a contract. Now, before you think legal documents, it's not that formal.
No, not at all. The contract is more about setting clear expectations and boundaries. Like, when does therapy start and end? Where it takes place? Will it be short-term or ongoing? It sounds basic, but it's the foundation for creating a safe and predictable space.
And here's something I found interesting. They mentioned that even things like, being late or not showing up are seen as something to work with, to understand. It's not just about enforcing rules.
Yeah, it's about seeing those behaviors as communication. It's like, what's going on underneath that's causing this? And these boundaries actually help create the safety for those deeper issues to emerge. Without them, it can be hard to really let go and explore.
So the environment and the contract are like the scaffolding, right? And now we get to the actual room where it all happens, the art therapy room. The book uses some interesting terms for it. Creative arena, potential space.
It's more than just a room, right? It becomes part of the therapeutic process, a container for the relationship to develop, with the art itself being this, well, almost like a third person in the room, a triangle.
I love how they use those little stories, those vignettes of Nusrat, Sarah, and Nigel in the adolescent unit to illustrate this. 3 different people, same room, but their relationship with it is so different.
Each person brings their own story, their own way of being. Like Nusrat, she's withdrawn, seeking a hidden corner desk covered in faces, and her drawing is, well, quite telling, the shadow of my father. It's like she's finding a space for her own internal world within the room.
And then you have Sarah, who's incredibly careful not to touch anything, bringing her own materials, using her feet to open the door. It's like her boundaries are written all over the room.
And Nigel, he keeps coming back and looking at the cast they made of his face from a previous visit. His connection to the room is anchored in that past experience. These examples show how personal it gets, how the same space can be experienced so differently.
But the book also emphasizes that despite those individual experiences, the room serves the same purpose for everyone. It's this consistent, safe structure, a contrast to the unpredictability of life outside. It allows for observation instead of just reaction.
It's a frame for the therapist to hold a certain distance, be objective. And that allows the client to go back, regress, but also to see themselves, observe themselves at the same time.
And the art they make becomes another kind of frame, doesn't it? Holding those experiences, those symbols of their inner world.
It's layers, really. And the book describes different types of rooms, too, like Roger Argyle's room at the school for kids with special needs. It's mostly for one-on-one therapy, lots of space and resources, even a separate consulting room with visual access to the main space. Very specific.
Then there's the studio at Hill End, which is for patients who are, well, I guess, functioning at a higher level. More emphasis on choice, personal folders for their work, a verbal contract, a symbolic exploration of boundaries through the art. It sounds quite different.
Each space is tailored to the needs of the clients. And we also get glimpses into individual therapists' rooms, like Claire Scales, who sees hers as holding years of patients' experiences, a kind of archive of healing, and Simon Willoughby Booth, who mentions a long-term client having their own personalized corner. It's those personal touches that bring it to life.
It really does make you think about the weight those rooms carry, the stories they hold. And of course, it's different for therapists who move around, having to adapt to different spaces. But even within a room, the materials themselves can offer a kind of intimate space for the client during the creative process.
Like nested spaces, a space within a space. And now we get to the heart of it. The therapy itself, the process, the product, the art.
It all starts with making something. The book is very clear about that. Both the act of creation and the final piece are central. It's through that process that inner experiences, feelings, both conscious and unconscious, can be expressed.
And they talk about that first mark, that primitive scratch, as Roger Cardinal calls it. It's like the first word, a basic form of communication. It's fascinating how much meaning can be packed into even the simplest mark.
And it's not just one meaning, right? It's layered. It's
Wow.
influenced by the culture at large, but also the individual's own internal culture. It's like a dream in a way, but unlike a dream, you have the artwork to go back to reflect on.
It's a tangible record. Ahrensweig talks about the artist as a spectator, facing the chaos of their creation. And that chaos, that artwork, continues to exist after the moment of creation. It can be revisited. Its meaning can evolve. The book even suggests that analyzing art picks up where analyzing dreams leaves off.
That's powerful. And the psychoanalytic approach, it really focuses on that visual expression, like free association in words, but through images. It's about tapping into the unconscious, bringing it to the surface.
But it's more than just revealing the unconscious. It's about creating a space for healing, for reconnecting with those parts of ourselves that might have been lost or pushed away. And within that process, the freedom to express oneself is key.
Which brings us back to those boundaries, that contract we talked about. It's within that framework of safety that these feelings, these thoughts can emerge. Without it, it can be too overwhelming.
It's like Winnicott's potential space, that space between mother and baby, a space of play and imagination. Art therapy creates a similar space, that holding environment for exploration.
And then the therapist being there creates this triangle, doesn't it? The focus shifts to the artwork itself. It's no longer just the two of them.
It becomes a third world, a product of both inner and outer worlds, able to hold contradictions, fragmented pieces. It has its own voice, its own way of communicating.
And the process then is about integrating what emerges from that interaction, the therapist helping the client to help themselves.
The therapist needs to be open, receptive to what the client shares, understanding it in the context of their life story, their past experiences.
Like with Peter and his clay heads, it's a great example. Two heads joined together, carefully painted, anxiety about the mess, calling them underground people. So much is communicated through that process.
It's the unconscious coming through. The therapist observes, asks questions, but doesn't rush to interpret. His description of the figures, the embarrassment, then the drawing of a house with dark windows, it all points to those themes of connection, separation, hidden aspects.
It's fascinating how the artwork becomes a physical manifestation of those internal struggles. Now, the book delves into how psychoanalysis views art and creativity, and it seems there are some different perspectives.
It starts with Freud.
Yeah.
He was interested in ancient art, especially its connection to those dreamlike qualities he was so fascinated by.
Right, and his understanding was based on his model of the mind, the id, ego, superego, and all that. He saw sublimation as a way for those basic urges to be channeled into more acceptable forms, and fantasy as a kind of safe outlet.
But with artists, his focus was more on symptom formation, the need to interpret art to derive pleasure from it, like his analysis of Michelangelo's Moses, where he was more interested in the story behind it than the artistic skill.
He seemed to have a lot of respect for writers, recognizing their intuitive understanding of the unconscious, but maybe not so much for other art forms. He even acknowledged that psychoanalysis couldn't fully explain artistic talent, suggesting biology might play a part.
Then you have Melanie Klein, who brought a different perspective, especially with children. Her focus was on the symbolism in play, those unconscious fantasies, the love-hate dynamic, how it all shapes development.
Marion Milner also had some interesting ideas, exploring those frames in time and space and seeing art as deeply connected to feelings. That concept of drawings as a private language that the therapist needs to learn to read is so insightful.
It's about being present, attentive, trying to understand without imposing your own interpretations. Winnicott also added a lot. His concept of the transitional object, that first symbol for the child, and the importance of play in that space between mother and child. He saw creativity as essential for life, for adapting to the world.
And Jung, he focused on symbols bridging the conscious and unconscious, striving for balance, for creative potential. He actually encouraged his patients to paint their dreams, valuing the impact on them rather than artistic merit.
Jung's own experience with painting really informed his theories, his ideas about the collective unconscious, archetypes, all expressed through symbols. The book uses Sarah's artwork as an example, her mother portrait, the death's head mask, as ways to give form to those difficult, almost inexpressible feelings.
And even the way someone uses the materials can be telling, like the kid squeezing paint versus the one avoiding making a mess. It speaks volumes about their internal state.
And the adolescent girl regressing to baby talk and drawing as a way to cope with her mother's illness, it shows how art can reflect those internal shifts. The therapist needs to meet the client where they are, using both empathy and a theoretical understanding of creativity.
The book touches on other thinkers, Chris, Sharpe, Ahrensweig, each with their own take on the creative process. It's a complex tapestry, isn't it?
Definitely. And it goes even deeper, connecting the creative process to the analytic process itself. Anna Freud, Ahrensweig, they all saw parallels between the artist and the person in analysis. It's about that need for distance, the fear of the unknown, the potential for disruption.
And then there's that idea of the uncanny, something familiar yet unsettling, linked to both art and the unconscious. Winnicott's concept of the illusionary area, Milner's framing, all these ideas contribute to understanding the aesthetic experience.
And we can't forget the difference between fantasy as unconscious content and fantasy as conscious daydreams, and the role those unconscious fantasies play in shaping our experience of reality.
Ultimately, it seems that art therapy is like a bridge connecting our inner and outer worlds, the imagination and reality, those primal urges and our more rational selves. It's all interwoven.
Exactly. Now let's move to group art therapy. The book starts this section with Freud's analogy of porcupines huddling together for warmth but pricking each other. It captures that tension between needing connection and needing space within a group.
It's such a great image. And what's interesting is that art therapy groups allow for both individual and group processes to happen simultaneously. It's different from verbal groups where everything is processed through talking.
There's a different dynamic. The book describes three main types of art therapy groups: the studio-based open group, the analytic group, and the theme-centered group.
Could you break those down for us?
Sure. The studio-based open group is very much about the act of creating itself, being the therapeutic agent. It's non-directive. The therapist doesn't focus on group dynamics. It's more about individual expression within the shared space.
Then there's the analytic group, which draws from verbal group therapy models. It's usually a closed group. The therapist is attuned to the group processes, working with individuals, the group as a whole, or both. And then there's the theme-centered group, where a specific topic is chosen for exploration, either by the therapist or the group itself.
Those are usually shorter term, more focused on the social aspects and the healing power of art. It's like a hybrid approach.
I like how the book uses that example of the children's group, giving us background on each child and showing their artwork. It helps visualize those individual experiences within the group context.
And the therapist's role is so important, creating that safe space where it's okay to express emotions, even cry. They also discuss whether the therapist should make art in the group, pointing out the potential for blurring boundaries and the influence of the therapist's skill.
Sounds like observation is key for the therapist. Noticing how clients use materials, their body language, their positioning in the room, all of that communicates something.
Definitely. And open studio groups allow for more flexibility, more physical interaction, which can lead to a sense of intimacy through the shared experience. Even accidents become part of the group dynamic. And clients can control their level of participation, even choosing to express themselves only through their art.
They talk about the complexity of having both verbal and artistic communication happening and how one might be used to avoid the other. But the advantage of the art is that it's concrete. Everyone can see it, which leads to more immediate reactions, even what they call interpictorial interactions, responses between the artworks themselves.
It's fascinating. And the therapist's reverie, their own internal reflections during the art making, is another layer. It's about holding those thoughts, those feelings, about the clients, the artwork, the process itself. And over time, a group culture develops, a shared history embodied in the images they create.
The book also touches on the historical influences of group psychotherapy, those early theories from Freud, Adler, Moreno, and the impact of those experiments at Northfield. It's like a lineage of building upon previous work.
And then it goes into those three models of analytic group psychotherapy, each with a different emphasis, and how they inform art therapy groups.
The example of the young adults group discussing leaving home really brings it to life, showing those multiple levels of communication happening simultaneously.
It's complex, but it's real. And the therapist has to juggle so many roles, pointing out dynamics, holding the symbolic space, managing boundaries, keeping everyone safe. It's a demanding but rewarding role.
Now let's talk about supervision. It seems like such a crucial support for art therapists, a space to reflect and process their work.
Absolutely. Supervision covers so much. Dealing with institutional challenges, feelings about clients, doubts, anxieties, and it's a place to really explore that countertransference, those unconscious reactions we have to clients, and make sure it's helping, not hindering.
They emphasize detailed process notes as essential for going deep in supervision and issues with colleagues, integrating different approaches for a client, all that comes up.
It's often all connected, and the supervisor needs to help the therapist see those connections, that bigger picture, and also to know the difference between supervision and therapy, recognizing when personal therapy might be needed for the therapist.
It's interesting how they point out that those dynamics being discussed often mirror what's happening in the therapy itself, like the example of the therapist presenting in a monotone way about superficial sessions. It's all connected.
It's a reflection. And then there's the question of using images in supervision, ideally with the client's permission, but also acknowledging that internal image the therapist carries. It can be very powerful.
And finally, they talk about the importance of recording sessions for supervision, research, reflection, communication with other professionals.
They describe different methods, from detailed process notes to checklists, observation methods, even a modified group therapy interaction chronogram.
What's that, the chronogram?
It's like a visual map of the group interaction. Circles for members, arrows for communication, little sketches of the artwork, their positioning in the room. It's a quick way to see patterns.
Interesting. They also mention ethical considerations, confidentiality, all that. And then we get to that final compelling image, the image as a third dimension.
It's not just a product. It's an active participant in the therapy, a nonverbal communicator. It has its own voice, it facilitates dialogue, it allows those hidden aspects to emerge.
And the therapist needs to step back, let the image speak, let the client find their own meaning. And that meaning can change over time, which is why having the artwork is so valuable.
It's a record of the journey. Like with John, the paints, how he initially avoided mess, then relaxed, his focus on the middle, it all tells a story.
It really does. So, to wrap up this deep dive, we've explored the environment, the contract, the role of the artwork, the psychoanalytic theories, the group dynamics, supervision, recording methods. It's been quite a journey.
It really has. And I think the main takeaway is that art therapy is a unique and powerful approach, offering a way to express and explore those experiences that words can't always capture.
Absolutely. And as we leave you today, we want to leave you with this question. What other nonverbal forms of communication might hold untapped potential for healing and self-discovery in your own life?
It's something to ponder, something to explore.